Hi, welcome to Talking Books and Stuff, the program that talks all about books and writing and stuff. Here's your host, Dennis Rimmer.
Welcome back. Yes, it is another edition of Talking Books and Writing and Movies and stuff like that. Talking today with a author, a teacher, an editor, a tomato farmer, and a cat wrangler, name of Buffy Cram, coming to us from Salt Spring Island out on the west coast. Buffy, how did you get into this writing business anyway?
Hi, Dennis. It's a good question. I think my reasons for starting are different than my reasons for continuing writing, but I think when I started, it was pure escapism. I loved getting into the state of creative flow and just, exploring a character and suddenly knowing all these incredible things about them, like, their most painful memory and what their mother did for a living and what their favorite mustard is and stuff like that. It felt kind of magical for me to have this flow of information about something that I'd made up. And I think I just got kind of hooked on that feeling. It was a good way to disappear for a little while. I was able to just forget about myself and my own troubles and just dive into an alternate universe. And that feels pretty good.
And that's a reason why a lot of people get into writing, I'm sure. Looking back as a youngster, did you have favorite authors that you read?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I had a little bit of a tumultuous childhood, so I would have phases of reading and then long phases of not reading. And so, I definitely was into the Anne of Green Gables series. I know that's a very Canadian answer, but I still, in my mind, when I picture myself doing things, I, for some reason, have long red hair, and I don't look like that at all. I have curly brown hair, so I think that those really had an impact on me, and I was really into choose your own adventure books for a phase. That might have been what kind of got me going. I liked the control of that. I'm part of the story. I get to determine the outcome. And I think later, as an adult, I was really drawn to magic realism for that same reason, because there's a little bit of space for interpretation there. It's like, is it magic or is it not magic? What really happened? And it reminded me of those early experiences of reading Choose Your Own Adventures.
And when did you actually start writing, in the sense of doing a story or a play or a poem, that kind of thing?
Yeah, that was in my university years. I in my undergrad, I knew I was drawn to writing, but I started with journalism because I just didn't feel like I had what it took to write fiction. I think I had I was in awe of fiction writers, and I thought, I can't do that. So I started with journalism, but I was terrible at it. And then I moved to creative nonfiction, and I did okay at that, but I still, my imagination felt shackled, and then I realized, well, I should just try fiction. So I might have been in my mid-20s, and once I gave myself permission to make up stories and just kind of run wild with imagination, I couldn't stop myself anymore. Nothing else in life would do. So it took over, I guess you could say.
Okay, and we have in front of us the latest release from Buffy Cram. It's called Once Upon an Effing Time. So why did you write this book?
Well, it actually started as a promise to my grandma. The book, I hope I'm not giving too much away by saying the book kind of centers around this psychiatric illness called folie à deux, and it's a rare but real psychiatric syndrome that people have. And my grandma had experienced something like it with her mother, and I experienced something like it with my stepdad. So folia do translates as a madness shared by two, and it's a condition or something that happens when, say, a parent is suffering from delusions, so maybe they're schizophrenic, or they think the aliens are coming or something like that, and the child in their care takes on those delusions and starts to believe what the parent believes, and also starts to see and experience the delusions that the parent is seeing and experiencing. So my grandmother experienced that with my great-grandmother, her mother. Her name was Nora. I'm not sure exactly what her condition was, but it's along the lines of paranoid schizophrenia, and so she had delusions of grandeur. She thought, Frank Sinatra was her boyfriend, and all kinds of stuff like that. And my grandma just couldn't stop talking about this experience that she'd had growing up. She lived out east. She lived in Ottawa, and so I didn't see her that often, but all my cousins out there were like, oh, she won't stop talking about this thing. And so when I first heard about it, I was much older. I was in my 20s, and I had experienced something similar with my stepdad. He was undiagnosed, but I think probably there was some sort of schizophrenia going on. And he never said it, but he strongly suggested he was Jesus. And I really wanted to believe him, and did for a while, and went through the mental contortions of trying to believe that was true, because that was a lot easier than confronting what it might mean. And so when my grandma and I started talking about this, it was just such a weird coincidence and so fascinating, and she asked me to please put this in a story and write her story, and I did promise to do that. So that was the kernel that got it going. And then I tried writing it as memoir. I tried writing it as a different type of novel, and none of those things worked. So I eventually settled on this version of the story, which is quite different from what really happened to her or me, but I think I needed that distance. I needed it to be different to make me feel safe to write about it.
And the book is Once Upon an Effing Time. What do you hope it will accomplish then? There must be something that you're hoping this does when people read it.
Yeah. I think first and foremost, I hope it will entertain. I think that might seem superficial, but throughout my life, I've had really profound reading experiences where I've just, stayed up all night reading a book and needing to know what happens next. And I think I just wanted to give that to the reader. And it took me a while to arrive at that in the process of writing this book. But once I was clear that was my intention, I just wanted it to be funny, also dark. Maybe that's my nature, and entertaining. Ultimately, just sort of like an emotional thriller, something where you keep turning the pages. So that was one goal. And then I also, of course, I tend to be like a little bit of a political writer. I always try to put my certain opinions I have into the writing without hitting the reader with a hammer about it. But I think another goal that I had was to make people question the permanence and rigidity of mental illness diagnosis. And I needed the scope of a novel in order to do that. I needed the reader to identify with the person who is mentally ill and then experience diagnosis and wrong diagnosis. And I've been reading recently about a new approach in mental health diagnosis, which is like a spectrum approach. And I think it's borrowed from the autism spectrum, but people are starting to look at other mental illnesses as being along a spectrum as well, and so that a person, just because they're diagnosed as schizophrenic or bipolar or depressive or whatever, it doesn't mean that they're stuck in one place in that illness for their lifetime. They can slide up and down a spectrum, and their experiences and therefore the treatment needs to move with that person throughout a lifetime.
Yeah, it's not one pill fits all kind of thing, right?
Yeah, and it can come and go, and it's a bit more fluid than I think mainstream medicine has been seeing it. So that was sort of like my hidden goal with the book. I just wanted to tap on the edges of that without it being like taking over the book or anything. So it's there if you look, but it's not in your face, I would say.
And from start to finish, you said it went through different variations. How long did it actually take to do it? Put together Once Upon an Effing Time.
Yeah, it has the word effing in it, maybe for a reason. And that's because it took me an incredibly long time to write this book. It took 10 years, and actually that's an understatement. There's some time on the edges of that, so at least 10 years to write the book. And it wasn't an easy process. I wish I could be one of those writers who says it's easy and fun. I don't know if those writers exist. Do they?
I don't think so. No.
Okay, good.
Not anybody
I've never met one. But for me, so I actually ended up selling this book at the beginning of that 10 years. I got a 2-book deal with my first book, Radio Belly, and this book at the same time. And so I spent that 10 years, or at least half of it, I'd say, writing with a sense of debt, like that I owed this book to the publisher, and I owed this book to myself and to my grandma, and that's, I think, why it took so long, because I really had to struggle to get out from under that. And but I think the gifts of that were that that was a painful process, and through that I had to ask myself some really tough questions, like, why am I doing this, and why has anyone ever done this, and like, wouldn't it be better for me to stop? And I ended up arriving at an understanding that for me, writing is a spiritual discipline. It's like that act of having to overcome the blank page, the fear of the blank page, and then trying to pursue an idea for maybe a week or a month or a year, and then having that idea not work out, and having to be honest with yourself about that, and then having to let go of that idea, and having to pivot and not give up on the idea, but try a new approach. All of that was teaching me really profound lessons for life. And so I think that I had to shift it, that for me, writing isn't about the end goal, it's about this growth that I'm experiencing from wrestling words and ideas onto the page.
Right.
And then once I made that shift, then I was able to finish the book suddenly.
Yeah.
So,
wow. That's a 10-year story right there. Buffy Cram, now that Once Upon an Effing Time is a reality, like I say, I have it right in front of me. Anything next on your list?
Oh, boy. Well, you mentioned, we talked earlier about cat wrangling, so I'm an official cat lady now. I work at an animal shelter, and so it's me versus the cats, and sometimes me with the cats. I had a day last week where I came home at the end of the day and I had cat scratches down my back from 2 different cats, and I realized I think that's considered a bad day. So I'm exploring other things. I'm finally out from under this contract I had for 10 years, and I'm giving myself a bit of space. I'm learning how to farm, and I'm learning about cats, and I am slowly in the background working towards starting another novel, but I'm just taking my time with that.
Taking your time. And we're talking with Buffy Cram from Salt Spring Island. Just one quick question before we go, Buffy. How is the tomato crop this year?
It's not as good as previous years. I had a religious experience eating a tomato at the Salt Spring Farmers Market last year. Some farmer handed me a green tomato and said, "You have to try this," and I did, and it was amazing. And then I tracked down the seeds. It was a green heirloom tomato. I tracked down the seeds for that, and I invested. I made a rookie farmer mistake. I invested basically my whole tomato crop is that one tomato, and it's just not working out. It's not as good as it was in the market. So I might have to buy some tomatoes this year for the first time in a little while.
Well, that's good. I like tomatoes. I know what you mean. We have we had a terrible garden this year, and out back in Radisson here we have maybe 2 tomato plants that worked, and they're all little round guys. So oh well. Why did
you have a bad garden this year? Weather
it's
stuff?
Been too hot.
Yeah.
Too hot. Too dry.
Yeah,
So.
Yeah, we're having the same problem here. I installed irrigation this year, and that has really made a life-altering difference. But yeah, I miss the days of rain. I'll say that much.
Exactly. Okay. Well, I want to thank you very much for your time today, and good luck with the tomatoes and the cats, and maybe another book will come along in a little while, and we can talk again. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for visiting with us today. This is Talking Books and Stuff with Dennis Rimmer. Contact him at dennis@talkingbooks.tk. Thank you, and may all the good news be yours. Oh, and don't forget to check out his book, The Great Canadian Notebook, available across Canada and at amazon.ca.